Peretz, you got a mishnayos there, Peretz.
I know, I'm doing homework. That's my muster.
I hear. I don't know if that's muster or
Gotta control my language while I do homework. So that's my muster.
I hear. That's kapara. Doing homework is kapara. Right.
Peretz, do you know what homework is?
I know it's 2 4-letter words together.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah. Okay. The man of the hour just showed up. We could start. Naftali is here. Tonight's stop is for Naftali, actually.
Why?
You'll see.
Why did you come so late to shir?
I listen at home to see if he's home or by his mother, because I don't want to bother him when he's home. So I saw he logged in from his mother. I got into my car.
There you go.
That was the muster for the day.
There you go. Anyway, so tonight's staff will make Naftali very excited. It has to do with yahrtzeit.
Okay, so.
Right? Okay. As a warning, I'm trying to get this staff straight. I'm having a hard time. I think I got it semi-straight. I hope we'll be able to get it through together. Maybe it'll get a little clearer. But as a hakdama, the halacha is that you're not allowed to make a neder. If you're using a different phrase, like we said, you're making a neder, you're saying, oh, this guy's food is a korban. It's like a korban to me, or a kainim, or right? So then that's considered a neder. But the only way the neder works is if it's on something that is in a human's control to make asa. Right? Like a korban is mutter for everybody to eat, and then when a guy makes it into a korban, that makes it into hektish, so that makes it issur. So there you can make a neder basing it on a korban. But, and we're going to see in the next parak, but if a guy says he says, oh, this piece of steak, it should be to me like avodah zarah. That's not a neder, because avodah zarah is always issur. That's not in a human's control. I mean, yes, you can. It becomes also when a human makes it into avodah zarah. But the point is that avodah zarah is always issur. It's not an option for a human, at least a Yiddish human, to be making avodah zarah, right? I mean, a Yiddish human also make avodah zarah. But the point is that something that's always issur. Saying a tray for animal, saying a camel, my food should be like a camel. A camel is issur, always. So therefore, that neder will not work. It's only on something that theoretically a human could make issur, right? So that's basically the din. So the Gemara is going to go through different scenarios. Some of them I don't understand why it's called a human can make it into issur. If it should be issur even without the human, but we'll see. So the Gemara starts off with we're on Yud Aleph and Beis by the two dots, 7 lines up. Tar v'tamei nosar pigul awesome. Yeah, so if a guy says that your food is going to be tar, tamei meaning it's tyrus, tamei nosar pigul. So those are all awesome, right? Because these are all things that can be made puzzle. So boy Rami Barchama, Harei like kibasar zivche shlamim la'achas rikas dam. Let's say the guy says that this food should be to me like the meat of a korban after the blood was sprinkled. Now, after the blood was sprinkled, the korban becomes mutter to be eaten. Right? Before the blood gets sprinkled, it's also to be eaten. After the blood gets sprinkled, it becomes mutter. So this guy said that this food is, or the whatever is that he's trying to make issur onto him, says this should be like the meat of a korban after the blood was thrown. So what's the din? So Gemara asks, if he said bahadin lishna, if he said it with that terminology, that's called hatfasa. Remember, these things are all called hatfasa, from grabbings, meaning you're grabbing something else and applying it to a neder. So he's saying that's a hatfasa of a heter. How can a guy say, oh, this piece of steak, I'm on a diet, so this piece of steak should be to me like a piece of meat of a korban's piece of meat, or a piece of meat from a korban after the blood was sprinkled? What I mean, that's mutter to eat. How could that be a lashon of a neder? So that can't be what it is. Ella, he shows there's a piece of basar shlamim sitting there. And then there's another piece of food, it can be anything, that's sitting next to this piece of meat. So basically on his table, he has a piece of kachim, of a korban, and he has next to it another food. Then he says, this is like this, meaning the food that he's trying to make issur onto himself, he says, is like this korban food. So now what does he mean by this korban food? Now, that korban, that meat, if it's on the table, the blood is already sprinkled, and that's what makes the korban mutter to eat. So what does the guy mean? Did he mean that it's like the korban initially, in which case it's issur, or does he mean like it's like the korban right now, in which case it's not issur? Right? So and of course it's lav dafka that the meat both foods have to be sitting next to each other. He's just saying that meat, that piece of korban, is going to be my meat or my food right here that I'm trying to make a neder on is going to be like that korban. So what's the din? The ikra komatvis, is he going with the ikr, which is the ikr of it is that it was a korban, and that's the hatfasa, and therefore he's making a neder that the meat's issur. Or is he going with a heter, meaning because right now it's mutter. So what exactly is the kavanah? So again, that the shaila is when the guy says he's comparing his food to this meat, did he mean the way it is right now, in which case the meat is mutter, or did he mean that it's the meat before when it was a korban still, and the blood was not sprinkled, and therefore it's issur? So we're trying to figure out what his intentions are. So Amar Rabba Tashima nosar or piggul, right? So what are the cases in our Mishnah? Nosar. Again, nosar is leftover meat after you pass the time that you have to eat it. Right? Piggul is when you think in your head that you're not going to keep it in the proper zman. Onto Yud Mezam and Aleph now. But nosar or piggul la'achas rikas damim. Nosar and piggul are after Zrikas Damim, right? Otherwise, and the Ran and the Taisis and they all say that this is lav dafka, right? We're not talking about piggul here, because piggul comes from the beginning, right? When you're bringing the korban, we're talking about is nosar.
Piggul is never mutter anyway.
Correct. Piggul is never mutter. So it can't be talking about the shaila is the korban mutter before the piggul, right? But nosar is extra, right? Meaning it was extra meat that wasn't eaten, and that obviously has to be coming after the blood was sprinkled on the mizbeach, because the nosar clock doesn't kick in until the blood is sprinkled on the mizbeach. So you see, right? And the Mishnah says that nosar, if a guy says his meat is like nosar and piggul, then it's a good korban, right? So he has to be saying, and it had to have had a time when it was mutter. So it has to be that he's going, when he says that, he's going with the initial way the meat was, which was a korban. So that's why we want to bring a proof that you always go with the initial thing, and the neder should be a neder. So nah, we're not talking about your standard nosar. We're talking about nosar of an olah. So nosar olah never got eaten anyways. So since it never got eaten anyways, so it doesn't make a difference if it's before or after. So we don't have any proof. So if we're talking about nosar shel olah, so then what's the problem?
There's no such thing as nosar, my olah.
No, there is. You could have nosar olah.
How?
You have to burn it on the mizbeach within that allotted time.
Right.
You're not you're saying there's no nosar from eating it. You're saying, yeah.
I don't think that's called nosar. If they didn't burn the whole thing, I don't think it's called nosar.
I think I saw somewhere that said that it would be considered nosar. I think if I'm not right, then you have a big kasha. Not that means I'm right.
It's brought down at the bottom of the arts, but the Mishnah Me'ila, it says that it could still be nicer if it's left over. It's an often art Mishnah.
If it left over that it wasn't burnt.
You have to burn it. That's the void of it is burning instead of eating. So if you don't bring
if you didn't
it's
burn it,
nicer. It's no different than a korban being eaten.
Yeah, okay.
It's not brought. That's the void of it.
Yeah, I did learn Me'ila once upon a time. Not that that's a riot to anything, but I certainly don't remember it as a Mishnah in Me'ila. But anyway, so that would be considered olah. So the point is that it was always asa. So the obvious question is, the Gemara asks, Amarle, im can't listen to basar. Maybe it's not so obvious, but it's Amarle, im can't listen to basar olah.
The choice in the Bach.
No, he didn't say the Bach. What?
He said it's the
It was
Bach.
brought down
The
in
choice
art
in the Bach.
scroll.
He said the art
Brought
scroll.
down
He said it's in the art scroll.
Excuse me.
It's in the art scroll. We're waiting for the art scroll to have Horus on the side of the Vilna Shas. Not yet.
They do have on the side.
On
the
their
bottom.
side.
Yeah.
I'm saying, no, we got to get art scroll into the regular
Real,
Russian
okay.
Kodesh, whatever, Aramaic. Yeah. So Amarle, Im Kain, listening to Basar Oila. So why don't you just say Basar Oila? What do you have to even get on to nosar for? Right? Nosar on Oila, they're both asur. Right? Meaning, ultimately, if you're making a neder on a piece of meat, so say the piece of meat is olah, say the piece of meat is nosar, what's the difference? They're both asur. So loimi by kamar. So it's telling you a loimi by. I didn't need to say this, but even this. Loimi by basar oila. I don't have to tell you if a guy makes a neder with the basar oila, the asur, that's for sure asur. The korban kamatis. He's clearly saying that this food that he's trying to be dietetic with is he's comparing it to a korban. So for sure he means a korban. Nosar or piggul, the olah tzricha, but a nosar or piggul of olah, that I need to tell you. I would have thought ki issur nosar, ki issur piggul. Meaning when the guy says that it's going to be like olah, like nosar or piggul of an olah, what does he mean? Because nosar and piggul did have a time that it was heter, but olah didn't. Right? And it should be like he's saying something that's always asur, which we said before. When you make a neder for something that's always asur and never had a heter, then that neder doesn't work. But loy mitzvah, and it's not asur, right? Or so that's what we would think. Kamash Malone was saying no, he doesn't mean. It's not going specifically with nosar and piggul. It's going with the entire korban, so therefore it did have a shasa kosher, and therefore it would have a time of being of heter. Right, so that's what we're going to be going through in the rest of the daf too, about what has a time that was heter, what does not have a time of heter. So meisvei, right, so here we go. Yeah, so ezu issur ha'omer b'torah. So first, an interesting meisvei. Mesa usually is a kasha on something, right? This is not a kasha. We had a shaila. Again, the Gemara shaila is when a guy says that this food or whatever it is should have the same status of this korban after Zrikas Dam. Did he mean before or did he mean after? Right? And what's the difference? It was before or after. If did it have a shasa kosher? Did not have a shasa kosher, right? So we don't know the answer yet. So you don't say meisvei. Meisvei is when you're asking the kasha on a specific opinion. We don't know. The Gemara didn't answer the question. It's a shaila now that the Gemara is asking. Right? So Gemara says meisvei, ezu issur amar b'torah. What is the issur of how do you get a neder that you're making on an issur in the Torah? So Amar, if a guy says, "Hareini shaloi ochel basar," I'm not going to eat meat, but shaloi eshte yain, I'm not going to drink wine. Ki yain shemeis. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just thought of this as you were saying that. Was a guy says that this meat should be mutter to me like the meat they matted for the choila yesterday. They matted a piece of chaza for a choila yesterday. So does that mean his meat becomes mutter to him or his meat becomes osur to him?
I hear. I mean, what was his kavanah when he said that? Was it going on the heter part or was it going on the issur part? Right, I get that's a form of, I hear that. That's a form of all these shilos here that we're asking. Yeah, you could add that to the mix.
He said it's true. He just picked the example up.
He's picking an example.
Oh, nothing happened yesterday with the
No, nothing happened yesterday. No, nothing happened.
Why isn't that matfis b'davra asur?
Because it's chazer. Because he's saying it was made mutter for a chayla.
Oh, davra asur.
Yeah, but for the chayla it was
piece
mutter.
that they matted, that piece was mutter for the chayla to eat.
No, I'm saying
That's what
manusha.
he's comparing it to.
Al tzadar it's mutter, it's mutter. Al tzadar it's mutter, it's mutter. Outside that it's issur, it's matfis b'davra issur.
You say Mamarashach. If it's mutter,
It's mutter.
I hear. I'm not sure. I'm having a hard enough time with the Gemara's examples, right? But I hear it. Or is there a way to say the opposite? It was mutter and then issur. Well, it goes back. Like let's say you cook on Shabbos for the chayla, so the food becomes issur, and then it's mutter on Shabbos. Then it becomes issur again after Shabbos, right? I don't know.
No, but that's issur for everyone else. It's just mutter for the chayla.
Okay, good. So and then the chayla goes and makes a neder.
The chayla makes a neder.
Maybe, yeah.
On what? On something that's issur for him? Or on
Well,
a
it
different
was mutter to him on Shabbos.
On a different
I don't know. Okay, so I don't know. Well, stick to yahrtzeit. Naftali's chalishing here for the yahrtzeit. He heard yahrtzeit. He's got it. Yeah, so he said, Omar, Hareini shaloi ochel basar v'shaloi eshte yain. I'm not going to eat meat and I'm not going to drink wine. Ki yom shemeis by oviv, like the day of the yahrtzeit. Yeah.
What? You do eat or you don't eat?
Ki yom shemeis by rabbi, like the day that my Rebbe was nifter. Ki yom, 1 second, shenerek ben by Gedalia ben Achikam, or Tzom Gedalia, or Ki yom shemeisi Yisraelim b'korbana. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I asked this morning. That's not the yahrtzeit. We don't fast on the yard. Nobody fasts on the yahrtzeit of Gedalia ben Achikam.
So some of the Mefarshim ask that it's not really, or they discuss it, that it's not Tzom Gedalia is really Rosh Hashanah. That's what Aharon's referring to. He was nifter on Rosh Hashanah, he was killed on Rosh Hashanah, and we can't obviously fast on Rosh Hashanah. I mean, that's not so obvious either.
Not like the case.
It's a little
having a kindness by his father's yahrtzeit. It's not.
It's a little different. It is a little different. But Shaila is okay. We'll see as the Gemara goes through. But either way, the Gemara is saying that if a guy says, "I'm not eating meat and I'm not drinking wine," the same way I don't do it on my father's yahrtzeit, right? Which was the specific day of his father's yahrtzeit, or his Rebbe's yahrtzeit, or Tzom Gedalia. Or kiyayim shereisi Yerushalayim b'chorbana, or on the day that you see that whenever I see Yerushalayim in the churban, so those days I don't eat meat and I don't drink wine. So some bring this as a source, which we discussed last week, Naftali, of fasting on a yahrtzeit and or not having meat, wine. Now the Mishnah Brura brings the Ilam. It was just nosar this to me a couple of weeks ago, before the whole crowd went off to. The whole half of Klal Yisrael was olah regel to Eretz Yisrael this year for Sukkot. So I was looking into the thing, and then the Mishnah brings this, that many say that on the day that, I never did this personally, I don't think, the day that you see the kaisel, and you tear kriya, then you're not supposed to eat meat or drink. He didn't say you're not supposed to. So there are those that say, don't eat meat or drink wine that day. Right? That's mamash based on this Gemara. Right, I never heard of anybody doing that. As it is, people are trying to get out of tearing the kriya by the kaisel.
Yeah, I heard people go at night, and you don't have to tear kriya at night if you go at night the first time.
That's not true. I can tell you, the rabbi here turned kriya at night.
It's not true. It's not true.
No, that's what somebody said to me. He said, if you go at night, you don't have to tear kriya.
No, you have to tear. There's a minig Yerushalayim. If you go on Chatzos and Erev Shabbos, you don't tear kriya.
So funny, the broken telephone.
Some say you don't tear kriya, but Reb Chaim Kanievsky, this Chazon Ish said there's no such thing as that. I was there with Reb Chaim Kanievsky at night. Me and Parrots were there, and he tore kriya at night. Night. Yeah, I mean, not that you need a riot.
You heard it before?
You shouldn't. What?
You heard someone say this before?
Of night? There's all sorts of rumors flying around with this stuff. Yeah. But the meat and the meat and the wine, I mean, the Mishnah Brura brings it. I don't know why I missed that Mishnah Brura till 2 weeks ago, but the truth is I could have seen it 100 times before. But he says it. He says that no meat and no wine. That much I didn't know. Also, I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean like till Shkia that day or even that night?
Where are you going?
I'm saying you go to Eretz Yisrael 4:00 in the afternoon, you get to the kaisel, and on your way out to dinner, right? You go to the kaisel, tear a little kriya, and then you go stuff your face, right? So I'm saying is I don't know if it goes.
You're listening to music on the way?
The music in the restaurant.
You
Right?
never allowed to listen to music
No.
anyway.
There's
Yeah,
two in
That's what
Yom.
I'm saying.
Your ice kriya zeifel korban. Then you go eat zeifel mikdash kehillah.
With the sandwich and everything. Okay, whatever. We shouldn't make litzonis. But the point is that a person who's makpid on that, so if he makes a neder that he's not going to eat on that day the way he didn't, so then that would be a way to make a neder. So Shmuel, we're going to change it in a minute, but Shmuel says that he has to make a neder the same way it was on that day. Meaning, let's say on the first yahrtzeit he fasted, and then he stopped fasting. So how do we know which day of the yahrtzeit is referring to? Is he referring to, let's say, the first yahrtzeit? Everybody takes the first yahrtzeit much more serious. Then as the further yahrtzeits come, you're already shikha, you're already forgetting. So you're not so makbid. So now there's a question: which yahrtzeit did the guy mean? When the guy said, "Oh, I'm not gonna drink wine and eat meat like the yahrtzeit of my father or my rebbe," was it the first yahrtzeit when he fasted, or was it the subsequent yahrtzeits where he didn't fast? So Shmuel says it has to be that he was doing that all the time. So so what's the case?
Why isn't this a kasha on the Ramah? The Ramah brings by yahrtzeit punk that we fast one day. The first time you fast, it's a neder.
Right. Yes.
You're saying here that the second year is okay?
So I was wondering, it must be that Pelina. I was actually thinking about that kasha. Then when I was learning the Gemara, I said, "Oh, that's pshat," and now, of course, I don't remember. But it must there was a better teretz than that. Right? The Ramah says, the Ramah says it beferish, yeah, that if you fast on the first yahrtzeit, then that's it, you're stuck. Like we learned over the last few classes, that's considered a if you light candles, you have to.
I already bought stock in the candles.
If your candle went out on the first yahrtzeit, then it has to go out all the other yahrtzeits too. The Ramah says that you have to keep that, you have to fast on all the subsequent yahrtzeits. So from here it's mashma that you didn't, right? Okay, I had up as a teretz, but okay. Well, the truth is,
you bring candles to Doma.
But the truth is, here it doesn't say fast though. It doesn't say fast by the yahrtzeit. It says no wine and no meat. We're saying that yeah. So anyways.
So that answers Gershon's question.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I wasn't. I was thinking about something else, but okay, I don't know. Either way, so what's the case? He's on a Sunday, the mispe avua, that his father died. Meaning his father died on a Sunday, and he's also on a Sunday on the same day, meaning whatever, a bunch of years later, right? Isn't that what we're talking about? Like we were saying before, even though there's many Sundays that are heter, right? Fikatani issur, and we say issur. Meaning again, he fasted the first day, the first yahrtzeit. Then the other yahrtzeits he didn't fast. So now he says like that day of the yahrtzeit. So which one is it? Is he so Gemara says Fikatani issur shmami no be ikaru matis. When he said that I'm gonna fast like that day, I'm not gonna fast. I'm gonna not eat meat or not drink wine. Like that day, he's going back to the original day when he didn't eat, which was the first yahrtzeit of his father or his rebbe. So you see, you always go back to the main part. In which case, that would answer the question with the korban. He means to go back to the original korban before the blood was sprinkled on the mizbeach, and therefore he means to make a neder that it's awesome. So Gemara says it's not a raya. No, the Shmuel hachiyitma. When Shmuel said this v'husha neder ba'isa yom, what he meant was this: Amar Shmuel v'husha neder uba me ba'isa yom ve'elech. Right, that's talking about where he said it's talking about where he kept every yahrtzeit not to drink wine and eat meat. Meaning we were thinking that he did it the first yahrtzeit and then the subsequent yahrtzeits he didn't keep it. So Shmuel's saying no, the only way the neder works is if he didn't eat meat and didn't drink wine on every single yahrtzeit that he had from his father. And therefore, it's a no-brainer that when he said, I'm not eating this meat like my father's yahrtzeit day, which that's very clear that he meant that he's not eating meat. He's making that meat into neder, that it's awesome. Fine. So then the Gemara tries to bring another ayah. Amar Ravina, Tashema, kechalas Aharon or ketrumasai mutter. So chalas Aharon, we're going to see on Amud Beis that they're going to make diyuk based on why it says here the first one is chalas Aharon and trumasai, right? It's mutter. So what does that mean? Kechalas Aharon. So chala, when you mafresh chala, that goes to the kohen. So it's going chalas Aharon. So then and trumasai is the truma that goes to Aharon. That means it goes to kohanim, right? So that's mutter, right? If a guy makes a neder and he says that this food is going to be like the chala of Aharon or the truma, then it's mutter, right? But okay, so why is it mutter? L'chayra, because that was never mutter. It's chala is always awesome, right? See, it's hard to understand. What do you mean it's not always awesome? Before you separate it, it's mutter, right? We don't know which piece. You don't know which piece. Let's say you do less than a shear. So
the whole thing is issur.
What do you mean?
The whole issur is issur before you mafresh.
Well, it's tevel.
Yeah.
Tevel. Yeah. So that's I think Tosfos says that. Right? Tosfos says that. Even though be'etzem, once you mafresh it, then live mafreya, the whole rest of the dough was really mutter. That's what I'm saying. It's very hard to understand, at least for me, what's mutter, what's issur, because bottom line is the dough is be'etzem mutter. It just needs to be separated, right? So anyway, okay. So you're saying kechalas Aharon ketrumasai, it's mutter because that was always issur. Ha ketrumas lachmei todah, but let's say it's the truma of the lachmei todah. So now again, the lachmei todah is a korban todah, like what we do when we bench goimel. So if you have any of those scenarios. So back then, what you had to do is you brought a korban and you had to bring 40 loaves of bread. 10 were chametz and 3 had to go. They were. The Gemara says on Amud Beis what each one was. Whatever. It's 10 loaves of 4 different types of bread. One is chametz. One is 10 are matzah. 10 are chametz. 10 are rekikin, and the other ones are like bagels, right? Cooked in hot water. All different types, right? And by the way, you had a day and change to eat all that, right? That's a lot of food to eat. So anyways, so ketruma, so from each one of those 10, you had to give one to the kohen, right? So ha ketrumas lachmei todah, it's mashma, that would be awesome, because that would be a legitimate neder. So on Amud Beis now. So what's a pshat? So vaha trumas lachmei todah la'achas rikas damim. When do you do the trumas lachmei todah? That's after you do this rikas dam. So if that's the case, and we say that it's still a neder, so you see that even after the dam is nizrak, we're going with the original status of a korban, and therefore it's going to be a legitimate neder. Let me switch devices. I'm about to die. Yeah, sorry. So that's what we're doing, right? So the Gemara says on the second line down, Ema kitrumas halishka oster. Don't be medayik trumas lachmei todah, right? No, trumas halishka. That's from the Gemara in Shkolim. Everybody had to bring. Everybody had to bring their machzas tashekel, and they used that for korbanos. So that trumas halishka, that would be oster, but not the trumas lachmei todah, because we don't know at which stage he's saying it. The Gemara asks, "About trumas lachmei todah ma'if." So what are you going to say the din is from the truma of the lachmei todah? That again, you have to give 1 loaf of each to the kohen. What would be the din? So you'd say it's mutter, because we're saying it's mutter because it's something that was always oster. So lisnei lachmei todah. So then, if that's the case, why don't you teach that if he makes the neder for lachmei todah, it's not a neder, and it's mutter to eat whatever it is that he made the neder on, the kol shekain trumasai. And for sure, truma, right? Why don't you say it that way? The Gemara answers, no, hakamash milan, trumas lachmei todah, trumas dehi. The truma of lachmei todah is part of truma. So basically, the way I understand it, all it's saying is that trumas lachmei todah has no different, the din is no different than regular truma. That's one teretz. Viba is tema, or we could say that no, that it's like we said originally, that when it says truma, what was the lashon? Truma, what was it? Truma, chalas Aharon. When it says chalas Aharon, right? So that one is talking about the truma for Aharon, and the other one we could be medayik lachmei todah. Trumas lachmei todah nami koydem zrikas damimhu, and the truma of lachmei todah can come before the zrikas damim. Meaning we were assuming that when do you give the trumas lachmei todah? That comes after the blood is already sprinkled, in which case the korbanos are all mutter, and then we have a shaila at which stage did he mean to go with the korban? So saying no, the trumas lachmei todah could have been done after Kigoin Afrashinu Belisha, talking about where he separated the truma from the lachmei todah when it was still dough, before it was cooked. Right?
Is it mutter to do that before the kmitza?
I don't know.
Count?
Mashra,
But I guess it does. That's the whole Gemara. But yeah.
Well, there's a whole Torah exactly when you could still separate it, but you can't give it till after the zrikas dam. But this hafrasha could be done before. There's no point in giving it to. I think so. There's no point in
the kmitza's b'makom zrika. If the kmitza's b'makom zrika,
no, but
the kmitza has to be.
There's an animal also for the korban todah.
Right, the animal needs zrika, and the menachos, the breads need kmitza.
Right.
That kmitza is b'makom zrika of an animal. Can't be mafresh something from an animal before it has zrika. Why would you be able to be mafresh something from the chalas before kmitza?
I don't know. I didn't see anybody discuss the kmitza.
Yeah, but a person who says he's giving a shlomim or he's giving a todah, he's referring to the kmitza.
I don't know. I didn't see.
So Yaakov, they bring down. The Ran says that you could be mafresh it. The whole baking process takes place before the zrika normally.
Right. You mafresh.
So you could be mafresh it then. I'm saying.
Isn't that what the Gemara is saying?
No, the Gemara is saying even by the lisha, but he's saying even after the lisha, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to have everything baked before you actually do the zrika of the korban.
The Rosh says that here too.
The Ran also says. I'm saying so.
Yeah,
everything. Oh, the whole process. You could definitely go ahead and be mafresh it at any point, but for sure by the baking, when you actually have the bread, you could go ahead and say, "Oh, this one's for the kohen."
Dafka, right?
The Ran says it's lav dafka that it's only by the lisha, by the kneading. It could even be by the baking because the baking takes place before the actual zrika.
Yeah, right. Okay, so either way, the process, the hafrasha is taking place before the zrika. All right, that's what the Gemara is saying. So how do you do that? When you separate it, when you're kneading the dough. And it's like what Rav Tuvi bar Kisa saying in Shmuel, lachmei todah she'afan ba'arba chalas yotza. So again, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to really bake each part with 10 loaves. But if a guy decides he doesn't have patience to make 10 loaves, so what's he going to do? He's going to make 4 loaves, 4 huge loaves. So if you did that, you're going to be yotza. Right? So the Gemara says, one second, we'll get back to that in a second. So it says, V'aktiv arba. It says 40. You have to have 40 loaves, not 4. Not right. You have 40 loaves made of 10 each, not 4. So it's the mitzvah. That's a mitzvah. But if you want to do it all in one big thing, then you're allowed to. Okay, but then when is the hafrasha? So Gemara asks, truma, but you have to take off truma. right? You have to take off truma from each one of the loaves. So maybe he takes one loaf for all of them. That can't be. For Tanam, we learned in the Mishnah, echad mikol korban. When it says echad mikol korban, you have to take from each one of the korbanos. Shelo yito mikorban al chavero. You can't take from one korban onto the other. Now, again, korban here doesn't means each type of loaves of bread is referred to as a korban, right? There's 4 types, so you can't take from one on the other. Each one has to be taken individually. So it can't be that he gives one entire loaf to the kohen, because that doesn't work. You need to give truma from each type of bread. The Gemara says, okay, okay, so break off a piece, right? Break off a piece and give a piece from each one. That can't be either. When it says in the pasuk echad, it's telling us that you should not give the kohen a piece of bread. You have to give him an entire loaf of bread, right? So therefore, how exactly is it working to be mafresh challah like that? But again, that's what Rabbi Kisna is saying, is that you can theoretically bake these loaves before the zrika. Ella darfashinu belisha. So it must be talking about where you took it off. You were mafresh it when it was still dough, before it became a loaf. The shakel chada mechametz. He takes one from the loaves of chametz, v'chada min chalas, and he takes one from the chalas, right? Which is not. It's interesting, right? Because we call chalas chala, right? One is from the chametz, one is from the chalas, which is obviously not chametz. V'chada min rekikim, and 10 are from the, what do they call rekikim? Is wafers, right? Whatever that means. Right, v'chada min revucha, and the other one is from like the boiled, right? So you see from this clearly that you're allowed to take off the truma from when it was still dough, the truma for the lachmei todah when it was still dough before it was fully baked. It's interesting because our hafrasha challah now, we take it off when it's dough, right? And the halacha is, as far as I remember, the halacha is that right when the water gets mixed with the flour, that's when you're supposed to take off the hafrasha. Not you're not supposed to wait till the dough rises. I think people, right, the minig parrots, you wait for the dough to rise. No, isn't that what people do?
Maybe take it off when it didn't rise yet.
Yeah.
Parrots is doing homework.
No. I mean, I thought that's what you told me to do.
Yeah, that's the minig, is to take off the dough.
People take it right before, like they shape it or put it into sections or separate it into different challahs.
Right, that's isn't that the same thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends. The sourdough, sometimes you separate it and then you let it rise again, or you let it rise again in each separate pot when they make challah. But usually they mix it, they let it rise, and then they separate it into separate challahs. But they take off when it's one big pile. Probably because it's easier.
Right, but the real halacha is that it's right when you put in. I don't know. Naftali's saying, how does it get done? I don't know. I don't bake bread. I eat bread. I don't bake bread. So you add the water to the flour. It sounds like right after that. That's when you're supposed to take it off. I don't know. I must have some consistency to it, right?
Yeah, sure. It's sticky, but that'd be a lot easier. You don't have to remember.
That's true. Yeah. So anyway, so that brings us to another din that's similar to this. On Friday night, let's say you're eating your challah, you're cutting your challah, and all of a sudden you remember, oh, I never took off challah, right? So if you're in Eretz Yisrael, you got a problem, you got to stop eating it. But in Chutz La'aretz, what you do is you continue cutting the challah, and then you just leave over a piece, and then from that piece, Motzei Shabbos, you'll take off a piece, right? Not work for the Gemara saying that will not work for the lachmei todah, because the lachmei todah has to be a full loaf. It cannot be a piece, right? Okay.
What it said after the first rising, she takes one.
He takes after the first rising.
Yeah.
Not like Peretz was saying that he do it right before. Okay, I don't know. I'm pretty sure the lashon is when the water gets added to the flour. That's when he's supposed to, but it seems that the Svarim say that the minig became not like that. Maybe the first rising is somewhere in between. All right, somewhere in Okay, so then weiter. So then, okay, so the bottom line is we have no answer yet. Every time the Gemara wants to bring a proof of that when a guy says he's making something to a neder, does he mean it the way it initially is or the way it is right now? Right? Like with the korbanos, initially they were mutter, then they become issur, then maybe they become mutter again. So what's the guy's kavanah? Bottom line is the Gemara does not give us an answer. So the Gemara is a lemed katanoi. Maybe it's a Machlokes Tanaim. At what point we say that this guy's terminology is what it's going on? Hare, because if the guy says hare like bechor. Let's say he says this food is to me like a bechor, right? So bechor is the firstborn, which is automatically hektish. Which we'll see in a few lines that's not. I mean, it is automatically hektish, but you also have to make it hektish, right? But the bottom line is it's automatic. So that means that there was no time of heter for that the bechor was mutter. Right? So again, so like a bechor. He says this is like a bechor. So Rabbi Yaakov says it's issur. Rabbi Yehuda mater. Rabbi Yehuda says it's mutter. Right? So what's it? Hey Chidami, what's the case? If he said it before the bechor, they sprinkled the blood. My time of the manda shari. Why does the manda say that it's mutter? Right? It's meaning why should it meaning it's not a neder? Before they put the blood, it's considered totally issur, and therefore the neder doesn't work. Meaning the bechor will eventually become mutter, at least to the kohen, right? But if it's before the blood was sprinkled, that bechor is issur. Right when the bechor is born, it becomes issur, and that's it. So how can if the blood wasn't sprinkled yet, how could it be mutter? And if it's after the blood was sprinkled, my time of the manda also. Why does he say it's issur? Right, the bechor becomes mutter to the kohanim. Elalav on Tamid Aleph. Now we'll just go to the todah. The machis must be our case. The machis basar bechor. We have a piece of bechor meat sitting there. Umachis basar the heich gabe, and you have the other meat sitting there, or any type of food. The Gemara says meat. And he said this meat is going to be like this meat. And so then, which way is he going? Is he going before the Zrikas Dam or after the Zrikas Dam? Must be, it's a Machlokes Tanaim between Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yehuda. Right? So the Gemara is assuming, okay, so this Shah is the Machlokes Tanaim. The Gemara answers, Loi de Kuli Amel of Zrikas Dam. No, it's talking about before the blood was sprinkled. Okay, so it was before the blood was sprinkled. That means it was totally issur always. So how can a neder work? Well, again, we said a neder can only work on something that became issur from human intervention, and this was not. It was issur from the second it was born. So, okay, so my time at the manda shari. Why does the one say that it's not a? Why does he say that? Who says it's mutter? So Amar Kra ki yidor, because the pasuk says if a man makes a neder, ad sheyidor bedavar hanodor, until he makes a neder on something that is nodor. La fuge bechor, the davar issur, a bechor is a davar issur, so therefore it's mutter, right? Because the neder never took place. So again, we said you can only make a neder on something that a human makes issur. If it's issur the whole time, then it doesn't work. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda is going to say that it's mutter, right? So umanda issur. Okay, so then why does the shita say that it's issur? It shouldn't be a good neder. This bechor was always issur. Amar Kra lashem, because it says lashem. L'rabba is davar issur. It's saying it's in a bechor. It's including a bechor as something that doesn't work. But the word lashem tells us that a bechor you could even a bechor, even though it's always issur, it can be you can make a neder based on bechor. Okay, so then what is the other shita that says it's mutter, that the neder is not a neder? What does he do with lashem? Uman deshari lashem, my avidlay. What does he do with it? So he says, no, that'll work for a chatas and an asham. If somebody says he's making his food is going to be to him like a chatas and asham, then that's a problem. Okay, so what it says, so now basically what you're saying is the word lashem is coming to say that if somebody makes a neder for a chatas and a asham, it's a good neder. But if he makes a neder that it's a bechor, it's not a good neder. Who says which? Why are you choosing one over the other? Umar isal rabbi's chatas v'asham. What do you see to include a chatas and an asham that it's a good neder, ulahayti as a bechor, to exclude a bechor. When answers marba nichatos v'asham shehu matvis beneder. I'm going to be marba chatos and asham because it's not you have to make it into a chatos and asham. So who's the one that makes it into a chatas and a asham? A person makes it into a chatas and asham. So that's similar to a neder, meaning a bechor is automatic. For chatas and asham, the person has to make it into. So therefore, that's similar to making a neder. So again, marba chatas to asham shu matfis baneder. A person has to make it into a neder, into a chatas and asham. A bechor shu kadosh mimei. And I'm going to exclude a bechor that's kadosh from the womb. Okay.
Why do a chatzas and ashram need the ribui?
What do you mean?
A person makes them usur. If his whole svara is that a person has to make it usur and it can't be usur me'ikroi, the chatzas and ashram are perfect for a neder. Why does it need a ribui?
Because I think because a chatas and ashram, he has no choice. He has to bring it. He did a chatas or an ashram, so he's mechuyev to bring it. So it's not something by choice.
The animal only becomes usur when he makes it usur.
Or it's saying the animal part, meaning it's somewhere in the middle. Chatas ashram, bechor is automatic. A nedava is a nedava. That's for sure mutter because that's a voluntary thing. Chatas and asham somewhere in the middle because the guy has to bring the chatas and asham, but he doesn't have to bring this specific. Again, I told you, I don't know. This Gemara is a little wild to understand, but that's the way I understand it. Yeah. So then the Gemara says, okay, umanda osur, and the one that says that it's osur because it is a neder. Bechor nami matfisa benederu. A bechor also has a way of being neder. I mean, how do you have a bechor that it's a neder? Meaning, how is there human intervention by a bechor? The second it's born, it's a bechor. No, the Tanya Mishum Rebbe Amru. They said in the name of Rebbe, Minayin lenoilad bechor b'soch braysa. How do you know that somebody that has a bechor, this animal gives birth to a bechor? Shemitzvah lakdisha. There's a mitzvah to make it hektish, even though it's already hektish. The second that bechor is born, it's hektish. There's still a mitzvah to make it hektish. Shenemar hazocher taktish. It says the zocher you should make hektish. So since there is a inyan to make it hektish, so that's almost like there was human intervention, and therefore if somebody says he's making a neder like a bechor, so then it's a neder. Okay, so what about the other shita, Uman Deshari, and the one that says that it's not a neder because so you make it hektish. Is it not hektish? Meaning, yes, your guy is supposed to, even though his bechor is already kodesh merechem as they call it, it's a kodesh, and you're supposed to make it hektish yourself, right? But you didn't. It's still kodesh. So therefore, that's not called human intervention. So basically, we have a few interesting machlokes here at the end. Whether a asham and a chatas is that considered becoming hektish from human intervention, and a bechor also, whether that's called making a chatas from human intervention. Okay, I hope it was understandable. The bottom line is to take out from the daf is that this din, and it's going to come up more in the next couple of days. You can only use something to make a neder if it was mutter at some point and somebody made it issur. But if it's always issur, you cannot use that as a lashon for a neder, which we're going to see in the next parak. Avodah zara, nevela, treifa, all these things are issur from Hashem. So you can't say, oh, this thing is going to be issur to me like a nevela. It's not issur to you like a nevela. Nevela Hashem made issur. You need to use something that you made issur, or that a human made issur. You have to compare your neder to that, and then that works. So that's what we're saying with korbanos. So a bechor, right? You didn't make it issur. Hashem made it issur from the second it was born. So making a neder with that wouldn't work. Although there's a machlokes that says maybe by bechor it could work. So there's different variations, but the basic rule is that in order to make a neder, to make something issur with a neder, it has to be issur with human intervention, and not just stamp something that's issur. All right. I hope it was semi-understandable. Have yourselves a fine night.
Just reminded me that Maisa that you had in South America with the shutuf and the bechor, Erev Pesach. You have a Maisa, someone asked you about that. It turned out that it wasn't kaddish because he had a shutuf.
We had right before Yontif, you had a bechor shayla. That's what he's talking about.
It wasn't in South America. You're talking about me?
Oh, I thought it. Yeah.
No, it was in you. I think it was Houston.
Oh.
You remember that? That's going back a long time ago, no?
Yeah, a year and a half, whatever. Yeah.
What?
That's it. Oh, maybe it's 2.5. I don't know.
Well, there they didn't know there was such a thing as a bechor.
Right, but Lamaisa, I was just thinking now, the fact that we say the Gemara says here it's kaddish b'mei imay, but there is something he can do about it to make it mutter. All he needs to do is make a shutuf on the animal on the mother.
The what?
He could make a shutuf, make himself a shutuf on the mother, while it's pregnant with the animal, and then he'll get out of making it kaddish. So why is it saying kaddish b'mei imay? It's not so pasha, but it's kaddish b'mei imay.
Why are you saying that? Why? You mean because you want? You're saying if you make it a shuttus for the guy, yeah, but it's talking about if you made a shuttus for the guy in a chanami.
I'm just saying, yeah, but you see from the Gemara is showing you that because you could get out of it doesn't mean that you're not in it.
Right.
In other words, they could get out of it and say, "Oh, so I made it a bechor because I could have bought myself a shuttus, and I didn't." So he made it kaddish, so to speak.
Right. Well, I hear.
It's a little bit backwards, but yeah.
He didn't do. He could have done something. That's not the same thing as
Right, it's a loophole. A loophole is not meikar adin. That's what I'm saying.
We like loopholes.
Yeah, we like loopholes, but it doesn't mean that yeah, not. There are Yidden that believe that not using a loophole is mamash issur. This would show not like that. If you don't use a loophole to save yourself money or to make money, you're shaita. That's today's mindset, pretty much. This Gemara is not like that.
I don't know if I can make that diyuk, but I don't know. Anyways, all right.
Yeah, I get to know.
Okay. You enjoyed the kachim.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I can't wait for Colin.